Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. This is the final part of the ranking every McLaren Formula 1 driver from worst to best. Make sure you check out parts 1 and 2 first and then come back to this. This is the final 15, the best 15 drivers ever to race for McLaren in Formula 1. Did your picks make the grade? Let me know down below and let's get stuck into this one. Number 15, Gerhard Berger. I think it's fair to say the Austrian was a bit of a workhorse, a long career in Formula 1 and always a solid driver. He drove for McLaren between 1990 and 1992, and in his 3 years he was there to be deputy to superstar driver Ayrton Senna. And he did an incredible job. He was already very experienced, having driven for ATS, Arrows, Benetton and Ferrari, taking 4 wins with the Scuderia and Benetton's first ever win at Mexico in 1986. He was close friends with McLaren teammate Ayrton Senna and worked as backup to him superbly, helping McLaren to 2 Constructors' Championships in his time there. In 1990 he struggled with a car that was too small for him, having been designed around the slighter frame of Alain Prost. Even so, he took multiple podiums and finished the year 4th. He finished 4th again in 1991, but also took his first win for the team at the Japanese Grand Prix. McLaren dropped behind the Williams team in 1992, but Berger still won 2 races, before heading back to Ferrari and later Benetton, before retiring after 1997. He's been involved in motorsport ever since. Number 14, Bruce McLaren. The founder of the company, and really it's Bruce McLaren's vision that is still integral to the DNA of the modern McLaren team. Its first ever driver debuted the team in Formula 1 all the way back in 1966. The first couple of years were very much development years, even using Serenissima engines for one race. The McLaren project didn't come good until 1968 when Bruce McLaren took the team's first win at Spa. The team also finished second in the championship to Lotus. That win would prove to be the last for Bruce McLaren. He got several podiums in 1969 and finished third in the championship. In 1970 he finished second at Kyalami, but sadly he was killed driving a Can-Am car at Goodwood and his team would have to continue on without him. 5 years later the team would be a championship winning one, and as of 2022 has won 12 drivers' championships and 8 teams' championships, all because of one Kiwi starting his own team in 1966. Number 13, Lando Norris. From the very first to one of the newest entries on this list, Lando Norris is very much the future of Formula 1, but has already been very impressive for McLaren. He has very much led the modern revolution that saw the team rise from the ashes of the Honda engine deal and start their long march back up to the front of the grid. After finishing runner-up in Formula 2 for Carlin in 2018, Norris was promoted to Formula 1 with McLaren for 2019. His first year he was dominated by teammate Carlos Sainz Jr., but he did score regular points and helped McLaren to the best of the rest status in 4th. In 2020 he took his first podium at Austria and got even closer to Sainz, who left for Ferrari and was replaced by the experienced Daniel Ricciardo. 2021 was the year of Norris. He took his McLaren and for half the season he was fighting for third in the Drivers' Championship. The one thing that evaded him was a win. He followed teammate Ricciardo home at Monza for a McLaren 1-2, and Russia he almost won, but the rain came and demoted him to 7th. He had taken his first pole position and got fastest lap. He finished the year 6th in the standings and well ahead of Daniel Ricciardo, a result he managed a second time in 2022. What's astonishing about Norris is he's only retired from 8 of his 82 races. That consistency in scoring points served him well at the length of the season. The next step is a race win, and that's not an impossibility for Lando Norris. Number 12, Jensen Button. I forgot how long Jensen Button was at McLaren. I thought it was just a footnote to his career after winning the championship with Brawn, when in actual fact only one driver has driven in more Grand Prix for McLaren than Button. He joined the team after the title win, and immediately it was clear this was not the McLaren of a couple of years previously. Even so, Button won 2 of his first 4 races and ended the year 5th. 2011 was his best year. Sebastian Vettel dominated the title, but Jensen was best of the rest and is one of the few drivers to have beaten Lewis Hamilton as his teammate. He was actually the first of 3 to do this, with Nico Rosberg doing it in 2016 and George Russell in 2022. Button took 3 wins in 2011. He was on the podium at 12 races and still finished 122 points behind Vettel. In 2012 he took 3 more wins, which would be his last in Formula 1, and finished the season 2 points behind teammate Hamilton, who left for Mercedes, and thus began McLaren's descent to the back of the field. In 2013 he was 9th, 2014 he was 8th, and took his final F1 podium. Both these years he beat his younger teammates. In 2015 McLaren got Honda power and were truly a backmarker team, even with the championship winning duo of Jensen Button and Fernando Alonso. Button beat Alonso in 2015, but Alonso returned the favour in 2016, and Button left Formula 1 after a 16-year career, with his worst championship finish since his season with Benetton in 2001. He made one final appearance in 2017, standing in for Alonso, and now runs his own race team. Number 11, David Coulthard. And now the driver who took part in the most races for McLaren in an incredibly long career. Of his 15 seasons in Formula 1, Coulthard and his really large chin spent 9 of those with McLaren, and was with the team as they hit their peak in the late 90s. Coulthard took 12 of his 13 Formula 1 wins with McLaren. He joined after leaving Williams in 1996 to partner Mika Hackman, and the pair would be teammates for the next 6 seasons until Hackman retired. 1996 was only McLaren's second season with Mercedes engines, and the development process was still ongoing. Ferrari and Williams were the ones fighting for the championship, and David Coulthard would have to settle for a couple of podiums and 7th overall. 1997 started with Coulthard taking his first win for the team at the opening round. McLaren was still not on pace with the top teams, but Coulthard did beat teammate Mika Hackman in the final standings and ended the year 3rd. McLaren took the team's title in 1998, as of 2022 the last time they won it, and Coulthard backed up teammate Hackman with a win at Imola and 6 second places. He added 2 more wins in 1999 and 3 in 2000. 2001 was dominated by Michael Schumacher, but David Coulthard finished runner-up in the championship again ahead of Hackman. The next 3 years didn't produce anything special for Coulthard, just 2 more wins and 5th, 7th and 10th in the championship. Coulthard left McLaren to finish his career at Red Bull. He had a stint in the DTM which didn't produce any great results, and he's now a TV pundit. Number 10, Kimi Raikkonen. The 2007 Formula 1 World Champion was once considered too young for Formula 1. Amazing seeing as he retired as the most experienced driver ever, and even more amazing is that he debuted for Sauber in 2001, having only raced in 23 car races previously. After a solid debut year, he replaced his friend and mentor Mika Hackman at McLaren, and for a few years was an outside contender for title contention. His first season was again solid, finishing just behind teammate David Coulthard. The Finn would then beat his experienced teammate over the next 2 years, finishing runner-up in the championship in just his 3rd season in Formula 1. After a disappointing 2004, Raikkonen bounced back to finish runner-up to Fernando Alonso in 2005, ahead of Michael Schumacher in the final standings, and winning 7 races. McLaren weren't as competitive in 2006, and Kimi Raikkonen took no wins. He left for Ferrari, won the championship, went off to do rallying for a bit, came back with Lotus, rejoined Ferrari, and then ended his Formula 1 career with Alfa Romeo. He hasn't done a lot in 2022, just one NASCAR race, but I do miss the Iceman, and his time at McLaren was all too brief. Number 9, John Watson. For someone who turned up at McLaren at completely the wrong time, John Watson definitely made an impression. When he replaced James Hunt in 1979, McLaren had come to an end of a strong period, and were starting to slip down the field. John Watson, meanwhile, had worked his way up from Goldie Hexagon Racing to a surprise race win with Penske in 1976, and now a McLaren drive. McLaren finished 7th in the Constructors in 1979, with Watson scoring their only points. They did even worse in 1980, dropping to 9th. Watson still beat young, inexperienced teammate Alain Prost. 1981 didn't start great either, no points in the first 6 races, but then a 3rd in Spain, 2nd in France, and winning his own race put him back near the top of the game. In 1982 he took 2 wins, winning from 10th on the grid in Belgium, before outdoing himself and winning the Detroit Grand Prix from 17th. After that race he was actually leading the championship, but ended the year 3rd. In 1983 he started 22nd at Long Beach with teammate Niki Lauda in 23rd. They finished 1st and 2nd. After 1983 John Watson left Formula 1, making a single appearance in 1985 in place of Lauda. John Watson was at McLaren between 2 golden periods, and still gave them some great moments. A fantastic driver who sadly seems to get forgotten in most great driver debates. Number 8, James Hunt. For a guy who apparently didn't like racing very much, he was sure good at it. I think the most incredible thing about James Hunt is the results he got for Hesketh. Hesketh weren't in Formula 1 for long, just 5 and a bit seasons from 1973 to 1978. James Hunt took a win, 8 podiums, and scored a total of 62 points for the team. No one else ever scored for them. It's not like they rounded up some fat middle-aged drunk blokes from the local bar. From experienced racers like Guy Edwards and Ian Ashley, to some of the best in Alan Jones and Eddie Cheever, Hunt was incredible, but he liked the booze and the ladies, and racing was always kind of secondary to him. That's why his career at the top is so short, and there's nothing after 1979. After leaving Hesketh with a 4th place finish in the championship in 1975, he joined McLaren for 1976, and if you have seen the film Rush, you know what happened that year. Hunt won 6 races, whilst rival Niki Lauda had a horrifying accident at the Nürburgring that took him out for just a couple of races, and after Lauda pulled out the final race, James Hunt won the championship. What you may know less about is his final few years in Formula 1. In 1977, the car was unreliable in the early part of the season, and Hunt struggled against his rivals. He got 2 race wins late in the year, but it wasn't enough to close the gap, and he ended the year 5th. In 1978, McLaren's rivals pulled further ahead, and Hunt had a torrid year, scoring just 8 points. He left McLaren for Walter Wolf Racing in 1979. He didn't score any points and retired from most races. After accidentally breaking a drive shaft in Monaco, he announced his retirement from racing. He did commentary, racked up huge debts, and died in 1993. Number 7, Denny Holm. The second ever McLaren driver was Kiwi Denny Holm. He was the complete opposite of James Hunt. He lived to race, and raced in nearly every category of motorsport available. He won the Formula 1 title with Brabham in 1967, and joined Bruce McLaren in 1968. Denny Holm was usually the quicker of the 2 drivers and had a lot of success in McLaren's early days. 2 wins in his first season, and 3rd in the championship. A win at Mexico in 1969, 4 podiums, and 4th overall in 1970. 1971 was a bad year, but McLaren bounced back in 1972, with Holm winning in South Africa and taking 6 podiums through the season, once again finishing 3rd overall. In his final 2 years he took 2 more wins and left, just as teammate Emerson Fittipaldi took the team's first Drivers' Championship. Denny Holm also won 2 Can-Am titles for McLaren, and in the years after F1 raced in pretty much everything, including trucks. He passed away whilst racing in the Bathurst 1000 in a BMW M3 in 1992. Number 6, Niki Lauda. The interesting case of Niki Lauda and McLaren. A massive coup for McLaren, as the very successful Austrian had already retired from Formula 1 after a terrible 1979 with Brabham, where he retired from almost every race. After a couple of years on the unemployment line, picking up fag butts off the floor and drinking leftovers in his local pub, Lauda came back to Formula 1, joining McLaren in 1982. It looked like he had not lost any of his speed, the 2-time champion with 17 F1 wins behind him, won on his 3rd start back at Long Beach. He also won the British Grand Prix and finished 5th overall. He started 1983 with 2 podiums, but it was a bad year, and Lauda retired from almost every race. He retired a lot in 1984 as well, but he did also take 5 wins and 3 second places and the 1984 Formula 1 World Championship, the 3rd of Lauda's career. His final year in 1985 was also very disappointing, a lot of retirements, and only 10th overall in the standings, but he did take his 25th and final Grand Prix win. He left McLaren as the new generation took over. Soon Alain Prost and eventually Ayrton Senna would take the helm and lead the team to new heights, but old man Lauda did a damn good job for the team. Number 5, Lewis Hamilton. This is going to be contentious because I know a lot of his diehard fans would demand he be number 1. But Hamilton's time at McLaren is not actually that good looking back. Understandable as he was young, and it was the beginning of McLaren's downfall, but for every up, there are some pretty damning downs. If you somehow forgot, most of his success came at Mercedes, not McLaren. That being said, his debut in 2007 was something to behold. He instantly got to grips with Formula 1 and put the challenge to his double champion teammate, only losing out to bad luck more than anything. 2008 was less impressive in my opinion. Despite winning the championship, he made very hard work of it, only just seeing our Ferrari number 2 driver, Felipe Massa, literally winning by a corner. After that, things took a turn for the worse. McLaren struggled with the new regulations in 2009 and Lewis floundered in a car that was not capable of running at the front. The car got better as the year went on, but Lewis was never really in contention. Over the next few years he finished 4th, 5th, then 4th again. He lost out to teammate Jensen Button in 2011, and over the 3 years as teammates, Button scored more points. Lewis left McLaren for Mercedes after 2012 and the rest is history. I don't think he's ever likely to return to McLaren, So his championship win in 2008 and the 21 wins he took with the team are what brings him to 5th on this list. Number 4, Emerson Fittipaldi. The first McLaren Drivers' Champion, Emerson Fittipaldi joined the team from Lotus in 1974. He was already a champion in 1972 and had finished runner-up in 1973. He won his home race in just his second start for McLaren and took 2 other wins and 4 podiums to take his second championship and McLaren's first. In 1975 he won in Argentina and Britain, but lost out in the championship to Niki Lauda. He finished in the top 2 places 4 years in a row in Formula 1 with Lotus and McLaren, but seemingly at the peak of his career and the world at his feet, Fittipaldi shocked everyone by leaving McLaren for his older brother Wilson Fittipaldi's automotive team. He would race for the family team for 5 years and would take a few podiums but had little success. He won the kart series and the Indy 500 in 1989 and now watches his many family members come and go from Formula 1. He may have had only 2 years at McLaren, but his incredible talent can't be denied. Number 3, Alain Prost. The French Formula 1 legend, who would go on to be a 4-time Formula 1 champion, made his debut with McLaren in 1980. Alain Prost joined the team at a bad low point and struggled to score points, taking just 5 all year and finishing 16th overall. In the next 12 years he'd never finished lower than 5th. He left for Renault in 1981, and if he had left it there, Prost would have been much lower on this list. After taking 9 wins in 3 years with Renault, he returned to McLaren in 1984. Despite taking a record equaling 7 wins, Prost finished runner-up to teammate Niki Lauda by just half a point. This was because of the infamous Monaco Grand Prix and the controversial finish that saw Jackie Ickx wave the red flag without telling anyone, and half points were awarded. Prost won with the Toleman of Ayrton Senna behind. In 1985 he became the first ever French Formula 1 champion, well clear of his rivals, and he won it again in 1986, although he was very lucky as Nigel Mansell looked like he was going to win when a tyre blew in the final race at Adelaide. In 1987 McLaren had an underpowered and unreliable engine. Prost got the best out of it and took 3 wins, but did not win the championship. He did take his 28th win that year, which at the time was the record. In 1988 he was joined by Ayrton Senna, at Prost's insistence, which he may have eventually regretted. McLaren dominated, winning all but 1 race, and Prost even finished in the top 2 spots at all but 2 races. And this cost him the championship. In 1988 only the best 11 results counted, which is dumb, and that gave the title to Senna. Frankly, Prost should have won 2 more titles than he did. He won another title for McLaren in 1989, but even this was controversial. Prost felt Honda favoured Senna over him, a lot of animosity grew between the pair, and at the Japanese Grand Prix they collided. Senna continued but missed the chicane and was disqualified. Prost left McLaren for Ferrari, and after getting sacked in 1991 he joined Williams, won the title in 1993, retired and started his own Prost F1 team. It was bad and the professor left F1 for good. Number 2, Mika Hackman. The Finn survived 2 terrible years with the Lotus team before joining McLaren in 1993. Hackman impressed during test sessions and replaced the unfortunate Marco Andretti for the last 3 Grand Prix of the year, taking a podium in Japan. He spent the next 8 years with McLaren, but it was a few years before they had a car that was capable of taking race wins. In 1994, Hackman took his Peugeot-powered McLaren to 6 podiums, but the car broke down a lot and Hackman only finished 4th overall. Things were even worse in 1995 with the new Mercedes engine. A lot of retirements and 2 second places was only good enough for 7th in the championship. 1996 was the start of an upturn in fortunes for Hackman and McLaren. They were far more reliable than the previous couple of years and finished on the podiums a few times towards the end of the season. 1997 wasn't great in terms of results, but Mika Hackman did take his first Formula 1 win at the final race of the year at Jerez. Then 1998, Hackman took 8 wins over the course of the year and was well clear of Michael Schumacher. 1999 was a crazy year for Formula 1, with Schumacher missing rounds through injury and Eddie Irvine being good for 1 year only. Hackman came out on top again as Formula 1 moved into the new millennium. McLaren couldn't compete with the dominant Ferrari. Hackman took 4 wins and finished runner-up in 2000, before a final 2 wins in 2001. After this he retired, briefly returning to racing in DTM in the mid-2000s, taking 3 wins for Mercedes. And number 1, Ayrton Senna. Of course the number 1 McLaren driver is Brazilian legend Ayrton Senna. His 35 wins for McLaren are more than anyone else managed, and he too won 3 championships. In just 6 years with McLaren, he accomplished more than anyone else. After heroic performances in a Toleman and 6 wins with Lotus, Senna joined McLaren in 1988. He had some hard-fought battles with Prost, as previously mentioned, and came out on top in his first season, finishing runner-up in 1989. In 1990, with Alain Prost gone from the team, Senna took 6 wins and the championship, but it did end in controversy again. Prost, now at Ferrari, was Senna's main challenger. They tangled in Japan for the second year in a row, this time giving Senna the title. In 1991, Senna won the first 4 races and saw off Nigel Mansell for his 3rd title in 4 years, but that was the end of McLaren dominance. Williams were the team to beat for the next couple of years. Senna finished behind Mansell, Patrese and Schumacher in 1992 and lost out to rival Prost in 1993. In 1994 he jumped to Williams and was sadly killed at Imola. The legend of Ayrton Senna is unlikely to ever be topped, and he is the greatest McLaren driver ever. So that was the list of the best McLaren drivers to have ever raced for the team in Formula 1. Where will Oscar Piastri fit into this list? And will Lando Norris ever take a race win? Maybe a championship? Only the future will tell. Got to say, it was a hard choice for the order of this video. All 15 of these drivers have done great things in Formula 1. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, have a Merry Christmas, thank you for watching, and have a good one.